like to be a WAG, Women Against George,
Yeah.
George Osborne's budget hitting women the hardest?
Definitely.
One question, as Billy Bragg once said, is wearing badges enough in days like these?
No, but if you go to beawag.com, there's a petition, you can take action there.
This is the queue for this year's Labour Party women's reception. We've just been told by a rather stroppy male official that we're not allowed in. What's happening here is Ed Miliband, the new leader, is going to be presented with a letter trying to hold him to something he said during the leadership campaign, which is that he wants the shadow cabinet to be half women, half men. That points up a big issue at this year's conference. It's really come back like it hasn't for 3 or 4 years. Gender equality, women's representation, and the equality agenda in general. How long do you think before women are in their rightful position in politics?
A very long time.
Oh, God knows.
God, let me think.
Not in my lifetime.
I think we've come quite a long way.
Should have happened already, quite frankly.
I think it's kind of a struggle, but I think it's gathering pace. It's gathering momentum. Although we're not yet at the end, the fact that we're making progress makes a difference. So, for example, we haven't got 50-50 in the House of Commons, but the fact that we've got 20%, not 3%, means that issues like domestic violence, care of older people, work-family balance are on the political agenda. When I was first in the House of Commons, there was 97% men and 3% women, and I got up in the House of Commons when Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister, and my first question to her was to say, the school holidays are coming, there's a lot of women are working, they don't have holidays that are as long as the school holidays. If you look at the research, it shows more kids get run over in school holidays, more kids become victims of crime in school holidays. Will she do something about holiday play schemes? And there was a sort of mounting sound of jeering, and I noticed it was from not only the Tory benches, but from our benches too, because they were thinking, she doesn't know what she's here for. She should be asking about political things. This is not a political issue.
George Osborne's budget has hit women 3 times as hard as men. So the £8 billion that they've raised, 6 billion of it is coming from women, even though women still earn less and own less than men.
This is Yvette Cooper, probably the leading female Labour politician in a generation. A lot of people felt she should have stood for the leadership instead of her husband, Ed Balls, and she's really gunning the coalition and the cuts programme on the basis of what it's going to do to women, the poor, pensioners. The whole equality agenda is being voiced really loudly.
Must fight it all the way. At least Margaret Thatcher had the grace to wait until the babes were weaned before she snatched their milk.
Well, I think it does feel like there's a serious risk of the clock turning back. You know, I did always assumed that, we would just keep making progress. You'd you'd smash through one glass ceiling after another, that for every generation it would get easier for women. You'd see greater equality. It might be, there'd be some things that would still be difficult and you can't solve every problem all at once, but you'd see progress. And I think we were, whether it was the childcare or the, flexible working, a lot of changes, and the Equality Act, the work that Harriet had done. But suddenly, you see these things, which is, the big impact of the budget on women, but also the proposals that they made around rape, which, singling out rape to be the one area where they give additional protection to defendants, when it's also the one area where the victims are almost entirely women. So with a lot of these things happening, I think a lot of women starting to suddenly get actually quite worried and think, we're going to have to fight for this. We're going to have to fight for the increased equality that we'd maybe taken for granted. The reason that we had such a focus on things like the child tax credits and the sort of financial support for women, was as a result of the Labour government of having a lot of women raise those issues, and their absence in many departments of women, I think, is a problem for them. It means they don't spot things, they don't realise that things are going to hit women's lives in a different way.
They don't know what they're talking about. And
But is that why the rape anonymity thing happened, do you think?
Yeah, I think it was
just a simple shortage of women's voices?
I think it was just, that sounds like a good idea, and they're just ignorant.
Do you have ambitions as far as Parliament is concerned?
People have said certain things, but you know what?
You fancy getting in among them all as white fellas? It would be an idea, wouldn't it?
It would be an idea. I've actually spent the past 2 months being one of the people who led on Diane Abbott's campaign.
Oh, really?
So obviously that's been quite a big eye-opener, and before that I was the Black Students Officer for the National Union of Students, so I've seen quite a few things. But as for ambitions, I'm all about principles.
We're having a series of conversations about gender equality and women's representation and all that, but sitting under it is a whole other conversation, which is about the sort of politicians who turn out to be successful now. White, male, Oxbridge educated, really not that ideologically driven. And I think one of the reasons why all these issues seem to be bubbling up this year more than they have for ages is because the domination of politics by that kind of person has reached snapping point.
Once you let one group of unrepresented people through the door, other people follow. So, since a few women took the step forward and started getting involved in politics, we've had more. Since, first 4 black MPs were elected 23 years ago, we now have 27. Things change once you let a few people through the door, but someone has to take that stand.
We've got less working class MPs than we have for, 50 or 60 years?
Well, that's been because of a certain element of parachuting people in from places. Now, that's one thing that I'm completely against. I'm all for representation. People are going to represent areas that they've got no clue about, haven't really lived there. I'm not for that at all. And I think
Ed Miliband wouldn't be the MP for Doncaster if that were the case.
I think so.
Fancy being Shadow Chancellor? Everyone's tipping you.
Yeah, well, it's very kind of them, but I think that'd be hugely presumptuous of me. We haven't even had a shadow cabinet election right now. The new leader's only just in place. It's for him to decide what he wants to do. I'm not going to give him any advice.
Your speech today was interpreted like that. I mean, you were really giving it welly, as they say, and it's been said already that perhaps you were setting out the stall for why you would be a brilliant contrast to that couple of, many jumped up public school boys on the opposite side of the house.
Well, what I was doing, I think, was arguing about the things that I feel very strongly about.
You're the newly elected MP for Leeds West. Tell me, walking into the House of Commons, starting your job, does it feel like being a female MP is still sort of an issue?
There are still lots of MPs, especially on the other side, who think it's appropriate to comment on your clothes and the outfit you're wearing. And
you hear them do that, do you?
Well, no, they think they're being really charming and polite, and so they'll say to you, "Oh, that colour looks lovely on you, Rachel. You really brighten up the place, don't you, wearing that suit?"
How long before all that starts to subside and being a woman MP is no more remarkable than being a male MP?
Well, now 22% of members of Parliament
Which is
are
a
women.
rubbish number, isn't
It's
it?
up a whole 2%, I think, in the last 5 years. So it's going to take an awful long time before you have equal representation of men and women.
5, 10,
in
15,
Parliament.
20, 50 years? What are we looking at?
I'd say at least 50 if we carry on at the current rate.
Have you got the energy to carry on battling the Daily Mail misanthropic, misogynistic view of the world for another 20 or 30 years, or as long as it takes?
Well, I think I'm like the Flying Dutchman. I don't think I know how to give up, because actually I really don't like unfairness. I can't bear prejudice and discrimination, and I can't simply sit down and put my feet up, and I hate the Tories, so
You'll
I'm
stop when you're dead.
condemned
You'll
to
stop when you're
carry
dead.
on.